Ingrid, I think we're good to start.
Right.
Yara, can
Great. So we should probably go around and introduce ourselves first. So my name is Ingrid Skog. I'm the security director for the Center of Digital Resilience. And I want to present my co-presenters from SMEX if you want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Lucy, and I'm the operations manager here at SMEX in Beirut.
Hi everyone, my name is Samar. I'm systems and network engineer, currently working as a digital security trainer at SMAX and handling the help desk we're going to talk about today.
Thank you. And so we will be going through the topic of Leafcutter, which is a new, really exciting project that we'll be collaborating on. And as you have questions or thoughts as we're talking, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we can address them later on. So let me move to my next slide. So I like to start with a comparison because I think it frames what we're doing with Leafcutter really well with a topic that we understand and then move into what we're actually doing. So this slide I show talks about farmers need weather data to be able to effectively grow their crops. And right now, farmers are under the problem of climate change, as we all are, but especially smaller farmers are really impacted by this. And when you look at weather data about who gets it, who gets that really accurate weather data, like most things in this world, it's unfairly distributed. Cities like Paris, London, New York get very accurate lots of data about weather. Whereas, for example, the example I'm going to give here, small farmers in East Africa don't have that access to really specific weather data, which is so impactful to what they're doing. So what happened here is, in this story I'm showing you, a Kenyan computer scientist developed an application to get that really specific, localized weather data into the hands of farmers in East Africa. That weather data, combined with their knowledge of farming, allows them to exactly grow their crops and do their work to the best of their ability. So I think this is a really fantastic example of what we're trying to do with Leafcutter. So if we move to our problem statement, right now, information about malware and online attacks does exist, but it's in closed communities. It is not freely shared. There are some open source, so free, available to people, resources to look at this data. However, a lot of them require high technical skills or sophistication that not all of us have within our organizations. So much like the climate change that the farmers are dealing with and the lack of access to that weather data, we in many communities really need to know what we're up against with these different matters, which are very important to us, but don't have the technical expertise to access it, don't have the data coming to us to work with. And so that is our whole process of Leafcutter. So we have this diagram to show what Leafcutter is going to look like. And there are three important aspects to this. There are the communities, there are the technology that we're building it on, and there is the information. So you can see in this picture that the technology is the core of what we're all using and the way we're communicating together. The data is going to be flowing between us, and then you have the community. So for this pilot of Leafcutter, when we first get up and going, it's going to involve Center for Digital Resilience and our Iranian partners with which we've operated for the last several years. It's going to involve SMEX and all of the partners and regions that they assist. And then it's also going to involve defenders in East Africa, the communities with which they help. So to take a little step back, we're building this on top of a technology that we already have called Link. It's our secure help desk platform. We built this on top of an open source help desk called Zamad. Everything we do is open source. The code is out there in GitLab for people to take, to use, to build on. That's one of our core things that we do. So it is, the special thing that we find about it is you can use many different channels to communicate with the help desk. So we have integrations with WhatsApp, we have integrations with Signal, email, Twitter, Telegram, and we're building new ones all the time. We just recently added a way to do voice messages so that people can call in and have voice transcribed in a secure way. Twilio, which we use, allows encrypted. So everything we do, we're trying to have encrypted to protect the information. And the whole notion of this is a way to have data easily come in and go out to the people you're talking to. If you think about, I like to pick on PGP encryption because we all have suffered with that at one point or another. It's not the easiest for people out there who need help to get set up with if they're not familiar with it. Even people who are familiar with it can have trouble with that. So if you have something like WhatsApp or Signal, it's an encrypted technology that people already use. So I can take my Signal number, write a message to a help desk that I know and trust, run by a community member, and say, I need help with this thing. And that ticket comes in as Signal and then comes back to me just in my Signal chat. It makes it easy, it makes it secure, and it's one central place where a community is working to be able to assist the people they're dealing with. And this is just an example of within the platform, it's easy for me if I'm having things come in via email, via Signal, to reply right back out on the same channel that that information came in on. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my SMEX friends to talk a bit about how they've been using Link and what they're hoping to be doing with Leafcutter.
Hi everyone again. Please just, I need to make sure that everyone can hear me correctly. If you're not, please do mention in the chat. We're gonna talk about the help desk. How did it start? How did it came to exist? Well, prior to October 17, SMEX did support activists in digital security issues. But when the October 17 protest started, activists and journalists were facing a lot and more various threats. So either device seizure, account suspensions, hate speeches, threats of all sorts. So in a sense of urgency, SMEX did open a new phone line and spreaded the number across the civic space for people to reach out. Back then, we were supporting these activists via WhatsApp and Signal, and keeping all this data apart on a spreadsheet whenever we could, that is. So at that moment, we communicated with CDR, whom explained what Leafcutter is and what could it bring to SMAC's new hotline back then. This is when we've taken on Zamad, the software that Emine was talking about, and it became our ticketing system. However, ticketing system isn't, without a set of policies, won't get the job done. So this is where SMAC started to recruit digital security experts, and with the help of a policy developer consultant, we developed procedures, guidelines for the help desk. These included answers to the previously reported incidents, such as account suspension, for example. But we did not stop there. Even with every new incident that was coming in, we were looking into the policies of Facebook, of Twitter, even YouTube, creating our own policies and helping activists accordingly. So we were creating new updated guidelines as we go. For example, when we first started, I remember getting a ticket about a video on YouTube. It was about a rap song, if I recall correctly, that contained hate speech, was attacking minorities and LGBT communities. So we started researching on what can we do, and we found a systematic and correct way to report such behaviors, and then ended up with the removal of the video. So yeah, this is how we're doing this, with learning from experience. We were able to create a help desk that can elevate the digital safety capabilities of civic space in our Arabic region. So moving on to real life data and scenarios. These are data on Zamad and what people incidents are communicating with us. If we can move on to the next slide, Ingrid, please. Okay, so this is a sample data from months between June and November. What we are seeing, so we are receiving cases from 3 different platforms. Through email, Signal, and WhatsApp, although WhatsApp was very recently integrated, so we don't have many tickets that went through that platform. So many users are using email at the time being. On to the next slide, please. Okay, so there we have 2 graphs. The one on the left is what people are reporting concerning what platform mostly. So people's incidents are more related to Facebook than Twitter. Other tickets are WhatsApp related, Instagram and YouTube, but in very less flow. On the right, we have what types of incidents we have. People are sending incidents about what exactly? So this is the real data. We have cases about accounts and numbers and devices being hacked. For example, someone who has a weak password, or someone that email has been previously stolen, and the same email is linked to other Facebook accounts or Twitter accounts. So by default, he might store the others as well. Other devices being hacked. Someone, for example, would want to download a software, searching through Google, through the internet. He ended up downloading a virus. This virus would encrypt all his data, all the data on his laptop. The only person who had the key to decrypt this data is the hacker, who would require a ransomware amount to be paid to decrypt the data. Other tickets are, we have many of these. We have general digital security advices, how to activate Facebook and Twitter two-step authentication, how to better a device security, what to do if the phone was lost, recommendations about antiviruses, anti-malware that should be installed on the laptops. We have tickets concerning legal advice on what to do or how to handle a situation when the authorities get a hold of an activist device, for example. Are they allowed to ask for the password? Is the activist entitled to answer? Can they give the data? Can they protect their own data? What are their rights and what can they do? Other than that, we have a whole big bulk of tickets concerning account suspensions. So account suspensions mainly happen when the user breaches Facebook community standards or rules of Twitter, for example. So this platform would set sanctions on the user. They could stop their activities, prohibiting them from tweeting, from posting, commenting, liking something, for example. After that, Facebook, for example, gives 3 strikes. So they will suspend the account for a week, then for 2 weeks on the 2nd strike, and if they have a 3rd strike, they would suspend the account for a whole month, and it may end up by the account being permanently removed. So yeah, I want to mention something between parentheses here. So that is important a bit, that we do our best to help everyone and to assist as much as we can. But firstly, we cannot guarantee the retrieval of an account, especially that this is not held as it is owned by a specific platform. We are a bridge between our societies and the platform abroad. At the end of the day, it's their policies and they are the one who take the final decision. Secondly, we take pride of being Facebook and Twitter partners, and we work hard to get there. This is why we need to make sure that the people we are helping, before escalating any claim to Facebook, these are people we are representing. So we need to make sure that they are the ones who contribute to civic space and society and have added value to it. This is why we go through a vetting process before escalating any incident. If I want to explain in brief how we do handle a case, for example, we take information of the user who's contacting us. We take full-on details on why would someone, what was the reason for suspension, what was the post, was it hate speech, was it a threat, what did he do for him to be sanctioned? Then we advise the user on how themselves they can communicate with Facebook to appeal this sanction. This is where we intervene. So we check whether this user have been really victimized, if I may say, or by mistake he was sanctioned. So and this is where we start the vetting process, and if that all goes well, this is when we start escalating the cases to Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, this is how we're doing this. So moving on to more strategic level, Lucy is going to talk about how to advocate based on these data I just explained.
Thank you, Samar. So basically, Ingrid, if you could move to the next slide, there's a great management theorist, Peter Drucker, that actually says what gets measured gets improved. And the point of our partnership with CTR is to exactly do this. So through Zaman, that is actually provided to us by CTR, we are capable of gathering this data, but not only having the data and doing nothing about it, but on the other hand, going the extra mile by doing advocacy. So Sarah explained the bit about what happens before we get what is called the data. But this data actually is later on sanitized, and it moves from a data, if you want, format to intelligence format, to piece of information that we can use. This information is basically later on analyzed and put in a context. So someone had mentioned that all of this started whenever the revolution in Lebanon, 17th of October revolution in Lebanon started. And the thing is, if you just take this data about Facebook pages suspension or accounts being hacked, on their own, they couldn't necessarily mean something. However, if you put them in the context of when they were taken and why they were taken, put these two pieces of information together, there you have a better image of what's going wrong and what can we improve. So SMEX's role here comes in doing all of this work and then moving it to advocacy. And when we're talking about advocacy, the information, the data that we've been gathering, we've been turning into blog posts, infographics sometimes, campaigns. We've managed to get in touch with the two telecom companies in Lebanon, Alpha and Touch, and be it through this project with CDR or with other projects like Muhal, the whole point is to go the extra mile and do the improvement part, if I may, which is the advocacy, to get things better, to influence policy, to make a real change in order to protect the civic space. So that's it from a strategic level. And Ingrid, it's the floor is yours.
Thanks. I'm gonna move over back to this. So I want to highlight a little bit where we are right now with the project, where we're going, and how those who are listening to us talk, thank you for joining us, can get involved, can ask questions here or later, and give your input. So Lucy gave the fantastic example that advocacy is a big thing that can be driven by Leafcutter, right? One thing that we've been talking with SMEX and with many of our partners about is social media platforms really failing civil society space. We get tickets, I have to tell you, in the CDR help desk, when we get tickets about Instagram accounts being shut off or YouTube content being taken down, it makes our heart sink because we have such difficulty working with those platforms to get them to respond to us and to help these people. That data together, as Lucy said, when we start pulling that together from different individuals and groups and create these numbers, that creates a really powerful story for our advocacy individuals to take and work with and say, look at what we're dealing with. This isn't acceptable. Some of the other user stories that we're examining is if you have an incident where you get a piece of malware, say, you don't have the time to investigate that sample. You may not have the staff, for whatever reason. With Leafcutter, it can go into a system where, based on other people who are sharing in the system, all of a sudden you get this pop-up information and enrichment that says, hey, I've seen that does this, it's impacted women's rights activists in this region. You start to get more to be able to act on, whether that's alerting particular communities, knowing what kind of ways to mitigate what's going on. So there are all these user stories we're starting to build out, whether it's for advocacy, whether it's for information security, responders, researchers. We're talking about journalists, how they might want to get access to this data that's usually locked away in not very friendly techie content, but in a friendlier way that you could query and work with the data. So I'm going to pause there to just kind of say, we're excited for people to help us think out from what you've heard. How could this help you? Is this something that you see a user story that you want to tell us so that we can plan it out and design better? Are there challenges that you see that we should capture in our planning so that we can be designing this the best for the community. The technology can be hard, but technology really, like, it's not the challenge, it's us, it's the community, and making sure that people come first and that we design for what the community needs and what the problems are. And if we don't have that dialogue, then we're just in a little vacuum trying to pick something that we think is right. So the more that, if you don't have time to work with us, that's great. But if you want to just throw your ideas at us and tell us what you see as the problems, that's really, really helpful. So we welcome that. And I'm going to stop talking for a minute and allow comments or questions to come in the chat.
Ingrid, by the time we get questions, if anyone would like to ask anything, I'll just add examples, if you don't mind, to what you said. So actually, you talked about difficulty with working with these platforms, and it is true. And the solution is, yes, absolutely, one, by pulling data, so we're able to better persuade them maybe, or negotiate with them better terms, better policies. But it's also something, another thing is important, is pulling strength together. So when we're bringing in different organizations or individuals from the MENA region to join in one coalition, let's call it, or one movement, or one alliance, if I may, that would be actually gathering data from the MENA region, not just from Lebanon. And then together, as one, would be either filing or requesting meetings and policies and pushing for certain advocacy tools, then this is how we reach, this is how we get to the change, this is how we get to the improvement of the policies that we have. And on the digital security aspect, Ali, we will definitely get to your question, leave your question to Ingrid, but on a last note, and on the digital security aspect that you've mentioned, from the data that we've retrieved, and as Samar had said, we noticed that most of them are civil society activists, organizations, journalists. So whenever we saw this, whenever we saw that there's a need for an actual digital security training, yes, it's not just about malware, it's not just about viruses, and I'll leave the technical side for my colleague, but it's also about them knowing and understanding what is the digital sphere, what is digital security, how to be secure in their everyday, day-to-day communication, not just click on that link or do not click on the other link. So two things, one, yes, digital security and digital security trainings, and as well coalitions and pulling strength together, not just pulling data together. I leave you to answer Ali's question.
Thanks, Lucy. That's a really important topic, because one of the user stories that I didn't mention, which you added, is trainers, knowing where our gaps are in the communities of what we're seeing as trends of where the training needs to happen. I think trainers are a very important user on this, again, who might historically be the people who don't have access to this data because it's locked away in very technical databases or communities that they don't have access to. I see trainers as being a very great user of this to see where are our community falling down on digital security things. So Ali, I want to answer your question. I'm going to go back a couple of slides to be able to say, yes, it can be a threat intelligence tool. It very much matters on what kind of data the community decides to feed into it, right? So SMEX being one of our key partners, I go back to this because it shows you the kind of ticket data we have that's going to go into the database that will feed the dashboard that will allow any kind of user, technical or not, to interact with it. So for things like legal advice, or suspended accounts, it may not be very technical malware-based security stuff. It can be. It's all about the kind of data that the partners feed in and then what you're looking to gain from it. That example I gave about malware totally is a threat intelligence kind of aspect. But when I raise the possibility of a researcher or a reporter looking at something like this, one of the things we've even played with, which I think might be further down in the development of Leafcutter, is the UN had brought up in RightsCon in one of the panels talking about this pivot point of when you see activity go from threats online in social media to physical violence. Is there a way for us to start tracking data and seeing trends of where we can start to do interactions and watch something more carefully and alert people and help on that front? So this is all to say that I think it can be a threat intel tool. It's furthering the data in, data out aspect of Link as a help desk to that next step of allowing communities who agree on shared norms, agree on who is seeing their data and to what level. We're going to have an ability to pull out personal information, say, I'm someone who got harassed on Twitter. My name, Ingrid, might be stripped out of what goes into the sharing, but the detail of what kind of organization I work with, when the incident happened, where geographically it happened, and all of those important things are what the community agrees to share out and look at with each other. And then it's up to the users to say, what kind of conclusions and things can we see from that information? One more point I want to say is in the disinformation work that I've seen, so often you see something happen that it's tested out in one community. Say in Egypt, something gets tested out as a new malware or a new exploit thing. And then it gets used in East Africa, and then it gets used in the global South. So if we start talking more and seeing that canary of something happening in one region, you can start to be like, I haven't seen that yet, but I'm going to prepare my people for what's going on. Yeah, really good question, Gus. So have we thought about collaborating with other sectors, commercial, military, national? We haven't yet. We're very focused on civil society because there's so much challenges, right? When you start going into different contexts and how profit-driven sometimes people can be. Trust underlies everything, right? So SMECs and CDR have a good trust relationship, and we work hard at that. That, for example, with setting up Link, we've had a lot of discussions about where the data flows, how it's legally protected, what CDR is responsible for, how SMECs is protecting the people they deal with. That's a really, really important thing to us because, again, the technology aspect of this, you have to do development on it, but it's the communities and it's the understanding and norms that we establish in order to keep that trust and build on it, to be looking at each other's data. So I would say for Leafcutter, we are not there yet. Something I will share is like a tangent is there is a information coalition that's just getting stood up through the organization first, that civil society groups are starting to do conversations around data sharing with pretty much industry focused groups right now. And that's something that CDR is involved with. Our other partner in Leafcutter, Defend Defenders, is involved in. So there is some of that. Maybe Leafcutter will come into the story at some point, but not right now.
When it comes to us as SMECs, our priority is and has always been the civic space. It's shrinking more and more by the day, actually, in Lebanon and the MENA region. So we will definitely get to the other sectors, but for the time being, it's a lot about prioritizing, and our priority is the civic space. So Gus has asked another question.
Thanks for that follow-on, Gus. So stripping out the identifying data, it is key to allowing partners to control what they're comfortable with sharing. Something that I haven't added, which I'm going to type in the chat if people up, the database that we're going to build on for Leafcutter is MISP. I always forget how to expand out what that acronym is, but you could internet search it. And the key part of how we're going to design this is, so how Samar explained using the help desk now, when she's done with a ticket and ready to feed that into the database that will then get shared with others, you want to have control over how many details in that ticket get shared. And we're going to have a tool that allows you to redact and remove those details of, say, names, someone's address, someone's signal number, so that that doesn't get shared. You share exactly the kind of details you want. Circle, who developed MISP, did a really good job of highlighting to us about, you can't force people to share things. You need to, over time, build that trust of what they're comfortable doing. We're also looking to coordinate with data scientists, that there's some technologies that allow people like SMECs, CDR analysts to run a semi-automated redaction tooling so that you don't have to go through and do it all by hand. It can suggest to you, this is a name, these look like things you might want to take out, and then you can do the ultimate agreement before it gets pushed away. Will the project be working with OWASP? Not at this point, we hadn't. So OWASP, for those who aren't familiar, is best known for doing that kind of top list of vulnerabilities that exist, say, in like websites. Like you don't want your website to be vulnerable to cross-site scripting. That's bad. That's something that's not wanted. We haven't looked at that. Again, right now our partners are, Circle will be advising us on the use of the database that we're going to build on. SMECs obviously is a very close partner for giving input about how they want to use Leafcutter. Defender is the same. But as people want to approach us and give ideas or see ways they could integrate, really welcoming to have those conversations. Thanks, Gus. I will allow awkward silence, but I do want to point out we have our websites listed on this slide. If you want our contact information, that's a good place to, at least for me, find mine. I think for SMECs too. So if you want to privately reach out, that's a good way to find us. I will say ending a session early is not a bad thing. Giving people back time is never a bad thing to do. Gus, how will you be processing largely qualitative data to see in larger quantitative patterns? Such a good question. One that I turn to look at. So one of the important things that two important things we're looking at with this project. One is, to that point I made earlier about Circle telling us not to force sharing of data just for the sake of getting your numbers up. We will be looking at having our data be just very good data points and not like large data sets to start with, because that will come over time. That like what SMEC shared, there's going to be really rich anecdotal things to start. These aren't going to be big data sets. The second thing is that mention of us working with data scientists. I like to recognize where my strengths are and where I need to ask for help. So that notion of what we're going to be doing with the data and how we present it to folks in dashboard to be meaningful and useful is something we're going to lean on the data scientist advisors very heavily for. We have one who's been working on a COVID tracking dashboard that's going to be lending their expertise to us. We already have some notions around word clouds and different kind of easy steps to work with the kind of data we'll have, and we're going to build from there. More than anything, we're going to try and be thoughtful about expansion, not narrowing ourselves in to not allow for different user stories and use cases as the project goes down, because that's the way to continue to have an open source project that grows and can be used by different people. Again, you can't design it for all use cases, but being thoughtful about being able to have many different ways. Yes, good questions do tend to come in at the end. One last call. Any final thoughts or questions? Please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I want to say I'm really sad I'm not in Lebanon like last year, but it was still lovely for SMEX to do all the hard work. I know putting on sessions with everything else going on in the world takes a lot, and you all do a really good job with Bread&Net, so thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you for everyone who has attended. It's very unfortunate. I'll take the chance to speak as the operations manager of SMEX and to say that it's very unfortunate we're not having a live event and we're not seeing everyone this year. But I mean, it's COVID. It kind of has put our lives at a stop for this year. But thank you all for joining. Thank you, Samar, for doing this with me. And yeah, enjoy the rest of Bread&Net, everyone.